A very good morning to Miss Nandini and my beloved friends. Hi, I'm Jessica. Today, me and my group members would like to present about penology and punishment. So, first of all, what is penology and punishment? Penology, also called as penal science, is the division of criminology concerned with the philosophy and practice of social efforts to express criminal activities. The term comes from the Latin piona, meaning pain or suffering, and has stood in the past for the policy inflicting punishment on the offender, although penology also incorporates other policies such as probation, medical treatment, and education aimed at cure rehabilitation of the offender. Penology is so concerned with the effectiveness of those social process devised and adopted for the prevention of crime via the repression or inhibition of criminal intent via the fear of punishment. The study of penology therefore deals with the treatment of prisoners and the subsequent rehabilitation of convicted criminals. It also encompasses aspects of probation, rehabilitation of offenders in the community, as well as the penitentiary science relating to the secure detention and retraining offenders committed to the secure institutions. For the next is punishment. So what is punishment? Punishment is to inflict pain, but it is not here that is different from the moral reaction to an immoral action it is looked for. For the latter, it is of painful nature. It does not alter matters the least that sensitivity to this pain varies enormously in different people and is often very small indeed. The real difference lies in the fact of moral reprobation emanates from one or more individuals spontaneously, whereas punishment is a conscious action on the part of collectivity. The action on the part when incorporated in criminal law and pronounced by a judge, it becomes a punishment. A similar demarcation is indicated in other direction. Revenge, too, is pain caused intentionally, but it is an irrational reaction of the emotions, generally of an impulsive nature on the part of one or more persons to a wrong which they have suffered. Punishment, on the other hand, does not come from one or more persons. It is meted out by the group, the collectivity acting consciously and rationally. Even in cases where nothing else is aimed but the satisfaction of feelings of revenge, a new and essential element has emerged, conscious reaction emanating from the collectivity. So after this, the goals of penology and punishment. Penology is a multidisciplinary subject that aims for the study and evaluation of application of penal laws onto the wrongdoers. It broadly explains the justification, characteristics, and effectiveness of punishment in its various forms. In other words, it is a systematic study of different facets of punishment and its impact criminals, and society. As a matter of fact, penology owes its origin to Cesare Beccaria, the classical school of criminology. These Italian criminologists argued that justification of punishment must to be deter potential criminals and not merely to punish the offenders. Later, it was during the end of the 19th century that different theories of punishment were propounded, focusing on the aims or objectives and punishment. So the next is goals of punishment. Punishment, however, did not originate in revenge, and the latter has certainly played its part ensuring the safety of the community be imperfectly and accompanied by grave disadvantage. In primitive forms of social talking, revenge is indeed immorally impactive. Gradually, however, as the community begins to take over this function, the position is changed and has now turned the other way around. It is to criminology also belongs to penology or the science of punishment. There are four goals of punishment. There is retribution, deterrence, incapacitation, and rehabilitation. Criminal punishment aims to control social order, but when it comes to justification, For sentencing, American values, justice, and fairness are used. However, there is no correct agreement on how to make punishment just and fair. In the 1960s, the number of Americans sentenced to imprisonment decreased because the rehabilitation was brought into the picture. Unfortunately, in 1970s, because of strong punishment for the purpose, retribution, deterrence, and incapacitation, a record or number of people were sentenced to prison. After that, objectives of penology and punishment. First, objective of penology: to examine the ethical base of punishment and the motives and purpose of society inflicting it. Then, to make a comparative studies of penal laws and procedures through history. And lastly, to evaluate the social consequence of the policies enforced at given time. After that, is of punishment in criminology. There are a number of criteria that can be laid down in order to distinguish punishment in the sense of that interest as criminologists from the other forms of unpleasant forms of pain. There are various of objectives that provided by criminologists Zettner and Hudson. First, the involvement of an evil and unpleasantness for the person on whom the punishment is inflicted. Second, it must be an offense, actual or supposed. Third, it must be an offender, actual or supposed. Fourth, it must be the work of personal agencies. Fifth, it must be imposed by an authority conferred through or by the institution against the rules of which the offense has been committed. Sixth, the pain which is inflicted must be intentional, non-accidental or coincidental. Seventh, to interest criminologists, the punishment should be imposed in response to a criminal offense. And lastly, it should be imposed by a judicial authority. However, as we will see in the future, there are a lot of practical problems. Centrally, the purpose of punishment can have many different purposes, but can also be contradictory. What is not reasonable, it is similar to what you think is necessary to protect the society. The literature generally raises two questions. What can the state do to cause pain, and how much pain the state allows in the certain cases? There is no final answers for these questions. By looking at the arguments, understanding the basics of system and others, it punishes and provides a philosophical and normative basics for us to debate how you think the punishment system should work. These are the different positions regarding punishment. In thought justification of punishment, approaches are usually divided to the two main camps. This is the result repulsive emergency. Retributivism is looking backwards without directly considering a good future. Revenge implies the imposition of something, penalty, response to action taken. The opposite is also true. To sum up, resulting approach tends to justify punishment based on what will be achieved in the future. That said, it is often used for the purpose of preventing future breaches, and as well we will see in the future. There are many different methods you can use to accomplish this. Thank you.
Good day everyone, especially to my lecturer Ms. Nandini and my fellow friends. I am Sarayavati Ravindran here, and today I would like to talk about utilitarianism and the purpose of punishment based on deterrence theory. Let's get started with utilitarianism. What is utilitarianism? Utilitarianism is an ethical theory founded by Jeremy Bentham and developed and popularized by John Stuart Mill. As the term suggests, utilitarianism found the principle of utility. It adheres to the belief that an act is good or morally right if it promotes happiness, and bad or immoral, it tends to produce pain. The key, therefore, in utilitarianism is the principle of happiness. Hence, again, utilitarianism, an act is good or morally right. It will produce greatest happiness to the greatest number of people, and that of immoral, it will produce more harm or pain than benefits or happiness to the greatest number of people. Explain why A utilitarian would not care whether an action is done out of deception, lie, or manipulation, as long as it produces maximum benefits to many people. Now, what does it cost Jeremy Bentham's model of utilitarianism? And let's start asking the questions. How does Bentham view the happiness? Well, for Bentham, happiness is simply the absence of pain. And so Bentham produces philosophic calculus to measure the degree of happiness or pleasure that a specific action may produce. The philosophic calculus, also called utility calculus or hedonistic calculus, it includes intensity, certainty, propinquity, fecundity, purity, and extent. For Bentham, the intensity, the pleasure, the better. The longer duration is lasts, the better. The more certainty that it will happen, the better. The closer propinquity that it will occur, the better. The greater the possibility, fecundity, that it will be followed by another pleasure, the better. The purer purity, the pleasure, the better. The greatest the number of people that it will produce benefits, extent, the better. Let us produce the John Stuart Mill's model of utilitarianism. It is important to note that Mills disagrees with Bentham. Mill refused to that we cannot calculate the amount of pleasure or pain that an act produces. That for Mill, the philosophic calculus cannot be the basis of morality, but the majority of the people that attains happiness. Thus, the famous utilitarian claims that an act is morally right and produces greatest happiness to the greatest number of people, and it is morally wrong if it is produce more pain than pleasure to the greatest number of people concerned. As we can see, Mill's utilitarian considered qualitative. Since the same philosopher emphasizes intellectual pleasure, the sensual pleasure, hence Mill says the same gossip, it is better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. We also have what we call the act utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism holds that the utilitarianism principle should be applied to a particular act in a particular situation or circumstance. It takes to an account the possible results of each act. Hence, the Mill suggests in utilitarianism the basis of the morality of an action is the act itself. Hence, in utilitarianism, we should perform those actions that produce the greatest happiness to the greatest number of people concerned. And now I am going to talk about theories and purpose of punishment. This theory states that the purpose of this punishment is to stop other people from committing crime by giving exemplary punishment to the offender and to reduce the ratio of potential criminals from the society by spurting deterrence. The main purpose of this theory is to deter or stop criminal or other people from committing crime or repeating the same crime in future. It means that people may take a lesson from the punishment so that to reduce ration of crimes. Its purpose is to make offenders an example and warning to others. According to this theory, severe punishment is given to offender. Then the essential of punishment in deterrence theory is punishment should be deterrent by including the following three essential. The first one is severity, and the second is fitness, and the third is certainty. And there has two types of deterrence. The first deterrence is specific deterrence or can call as individual deterrence. The punishment given to the particular offender to prevent or deter that particular individual from committing crime in the future. And the general deterrence is the punishment given to the particular offender to prevent to or order the potential offender from engaging in the criminal activities.
Hi and hello everyone, I'm Rakesh Kumar from Batch 20. Today I would like to present about the rehabilitation theory. Rehabilitation is a central goal of correctional system. This goal rests on the assumption that individuals can be treated and desist from crime. Rehabilitation was a central feature of correctional system first half of 20th century. The favorability of rehabilitation program declined in 1970s and 1980s but has regained favor in recent years. Rehabilitation includes a broad array of programs including mental health, substance abuse, and educational services. Specialty programs has also been developed for women, people who have been convicted of sex offenses, and individuals supervised and paroled. Rehabilitation is essentially on progress of helping inmates grow and change. The idea behind this rehabilitation is that no one is born criminal and criminals are also humans. The purpose of rehabilitation. The purpose of rehabilitation is allowing them to separate themselves from environmental factors that made them commit a crime in the first place. The idea is to treat each of the major contributing factors in order to help give an inmate the ability to live a crime free life after they are released from prison. One of the biggest challenges for inmates is being institutionalized, living in prison so long that they no longer know how to function in the outside world. This makes some of the commit crimes so they can go back to prison where they know how to survive. Rehabilitation programs have been created to help inmates readjust society and remove themselves from all the environmental risk factors. This help to recognize and then proper treatment for the criminals who commit the crime. The rehabilitation is also one of the reasons to reform the criminals. It helps to strengthen the character of the criminals so that they may not become an easy victim of doing crimes. So according to this, all the criminals able to receive physical, moral and intellectual training in order to improve their character and make them law-abiding citizens. And lastly, type of rehabilitation programs. There are many types of activities and programs for the criminals who trying to rehabilitate themselves. Programs and activities such as vocational training, educational training, religion session, medical treatment, counseling, games and other recreations, cultural activities, and specialty programs have also been developed for women, people who have been convicted of sex offenses, and individuals supervised and paroled. And the next is incapacitation. Incapacitation refers to the restriction of an individual's freedom and liberties that they would normally have in society. Within the criminal justice system, incapacitation is the response used when a person has committed a crime. By incapacitating the convicted offender, we prevent the individuals from committing future crimes because he is removed from the society and locked up or restrained somehow. It can be noted that incapacitation takes a forward-looking perspective in that it cannot rectify crimes that have been committed and only attempts to prevent crimes from being committed in the future. Incapacitation is also described as being one of four goals of incarceration or imprisonment. Incapacitation comes first, and then comes deterrence, rehabilitation, finally retribution. Incarceration is the most common method of incapacitating offenders. However, other more severe forms such as capital punishment are also used. And the purpose of the incapacitation, the overall aim of incapacitation is to prevent the most dangerous or prolific offenders from reoffending in the community. Incapacitation means to finish the capacity of criminals by giving such kind of severe punishments. The idea is to keep away the offenders from the society by keep the society safe from the offenders. Type of punishments. Punishments like life imprisonment, death penalty are given to the offenders under this incapacitation.
Elements retributivism. Perhaps the most straightforward expression of retributivism is to be found in the lex talionis. It provides us with no guidance to the appropriate punishment for other offences such as fraud or blackmail, or it pays scant regard to the notion of punishment should be only inflicted upon those that are held to be responsible for an offence, whether a killing was an accident or a deliberate act. Just that it was against this background that what has been referred as the new retributivism emerged. Also known as the Back to Justice movement, it grew in popularity from the mid-1970s onward. The text in the new movement was called Doing Justice, 1H 1976. There are a number of points to be noted. First, the justification for punishment is that it is necessary for the state of express censure. Desert territories morally to account to their actions. Second, the censor is connected with a crime that has been committed. There is no reference to or consent with any future offending. Proportionally, it seems clear that some offences are obviously easy to rank in relation to one another. Serious assault versus thief from a car, for example, but in other cases this is less straightforward, the perhaps especially in relation to minor offences. In relationship to cardinal proportionality, one of the major problems concerns the basis of which the decision is made. As Edison 2003 puts it, the problem is that desert theory can help with the graduation of punishment within the most severe and least severe point, can doing nothing to the what those anchoring points should be. The consequence in the cardinal proportionally tends to have much influence by politically considerations. Fourth type of punishment. Retribution. As one, the oldest form of punishment, retribution has roots in the Judeo-Christian tradition of justice. In a book Criminal Law, Lisa Maestrom explains that retribution prevents crime by giving victims of society a certain sense of satisfaction that a offender has been punished appropriately, reinforcing the belief that the criminal justice system is working effectively. Modern examples of retribution include the widespread practice of imposing fines, as well as enforcing mandatory sentences polishes for certain offences under the law. As the effect in punishment, retribution has been civilized as being override and limited its capacity to change society behavior, however it remained popular. Rehabilitation. A common prison policy in America up until 1970s, rehabilitation focuses on helping criminals and prisoners overcome the barriers that lead them in committing criminal acts. They include developing occupational skills as well as resolving physiological issues as the drug addiction and aggression, explains the American Physiological Association. Consider the opposite of retribution. The ultimate purpose of rehabilitation is to transit the offenders back in the society. The APA reports that in the examination message data, individual approaches to crime complement with the community. Based approaches can prove effective in reducing offend recidivism. Restoration. A radically different approach to criminal punishment. The goal of restoration is of offender to make direct amends to both the victim and the community in the which the crime was committed. Although relatively new practice in modern times, the concept of restoration justice can be found in the early legal system of Western Europe, incident habeas justice, and pre-colonial African societies. Deterrence. There are four deterrents. The commonly one, the effective of deterrence as a criminal punishment is difficult to access because the people may follow the law of the reason that may be challenging to track, such as religious of moral belief, physical incapacitation, or lack of opportunity. So the deterrents got a four type of deterrents. So it's the one punishment.
Also, now I would like to share about the sociology of punishment. The sociology of punishment seeks to understand why and how we punish, the general justifying aim of punishment, and the principle of distribution. Punishment involves the intentional infliction of pain and or the deprivation of rights and liberty. In this case, Durkheim argued that in pre-industrial society, crime was rarer because of powerful agency of socialization and social controls like religion and family. Continuously, this created a combination of consensus and community which influenced by people's behavioral. Then crime rates were higher in cities because of the powerful influence that religion and family could have on socialization were undermined mind by the complexity of modern life. Also, without a crime rate society in utterly impossible. It cannot constitute in itself, maintain its solidarity, or develop morally. In short, we cannot live without or with a crime rate. Lastly but not the least, Durkheim social controls, community and conscience are weaker, which means people are more likely to experience enemies, normlessness. Thank you.
Here we go again. Maximilian Karl Emil Weber was a German sociologist, historian, jurist, and political economist who is regarded among the most important theories on the development of modern Western society. His ideas will profoundly influence social theory and social research. The German sociologist Max Weber was the first to formally study bureaucracy, and his works led to the popularization of his term. In his essay, Bureaucracy, published in his magnum opus Economy and Society, Weber described many ideal typical forms of public administration, government, and business. Weber listed several preconditions for the emergence of bureaucracy, including an increase in the amount of space and population being administrated, an increase in the complexity of the administrative tasks being carried out, and the existence of monetary economy requiring more efficient administrative system. Development of communication and transportation technologies makes more efficient administration possible, and democratization and rationalization of culture result in demands for equal treatment. Although he was not necessarily an admirer of bureaucracy, Weber saw bureaucratization as the most efficient and rational way of organizing human activity, and therefore as the key to rational legal authority indispensable to the modern world. Furthermore, he saw it is as the key to process in the ongoing rationalization of Western society. Weber also saw bureaucracy, however, as a threat to individual freedoms, and the ongoing bureaucracy as leading a polar night of city of icy darkness, in which increased rationalization of human traps individual in a soul's iron cage of bureaucratic rule-based rational control. Weber's critical Weber's critical of the bureaucracy of society become one of the most enduring part of his work. Many aspects of modern public administration are based on his work. And classic, hierarchically organized civil service of the continental types, also called Weberian civil service or Weberian bureaucracy. It is debated among social scientists whether Weberian bureaucracy contributes to economic growth. Thank you.
For Marxists, crime is inevitable in capitalism because capitalism is criminogenic by its very nature causes crime. Poverty may mean that crime is the only way working class can survive. Crime can be the only way they can obtain the consumer goods encouraged by the capitalist advertising, resulting in theft, alienation, and lack of control over their lives, may lead to frustration and aggression, resulting in non-utilitarian crimes such as violence. The need to win all the costs or go out of business, along with the desire of self-enrichment, encourages capitalists to commit white-collar and corporate crime. Example: tax evasion. David Gordon, 1976. Crime is a rational response to capitalism and is thus found in every class. Thank you.
Norbert Elias. The way a society punishes its offenders has become a yardstick by which it can be judged as civilized. In civilized society, for example, punishment on the human body has become increasingly unacceptable. Prisons have been built in the remote locations out of public view, with authorities responsible for undertaking what is seen as the unpleasant task of controlling the inmates. However, as the work of Nobel Elias shows, being civilized is the standard that did not simplify fall out for the sky one day. Instead, it should be understood as the product as long-term historical process, one that is contingent as fragile capital of production, uncivilized consequence itself, and capital of being interrupted at any time. Current changes in the penal framework of our society, such as the United Kingdom, suggest that we may be experiencing one of these decivilizing continental.
To talk about Michael Funkel. The word decline is also gentle the Funkel analysis of the natural and use the punishment. In the case, it is not predicted being attendance to overreactive of class ignorant at Funkel's use big particular analytical method to uncover what is present as the technology of power which define two different penal styles and how these operate to discipline human bodies and human societies. He used two defining examples to illustrate these different styles. The first concept, the explanation a timely case registered in the mid-20th country. The second, the rules from the House of Young prisoner in Paris in the mid-30th country. Fungal agreement is the touch of public education and the prison timetable punish different crime. What is important about them is that each define the gender preferred styles. The earlier periods is one whether the method considerable power over citizen and more particularly over their bodies the public education and established the prerogative of its elevation screen the response the power. 8 years later, in the modern scaffold, the lawyer has such power over this subject. Later, the infecting pain opened the body as different from of religion impossible. This new system of discipline government the mind of should including control thought surveillance. Then I want to talk the impact of Google. As can be seen from the previous discussion, Michael work Funkel are a major involved in modern scientific research. More central, the work emergence meritedly, it has also been referred to as the gender theory the government based on some of Funkel's idea in this field. From this idea, Funkel's was not about government, but about the form of the government or government in general. Senselessness, a complex trace technique it which skills provide individual the social behavior also know the action to action. The analysis of crime control, the private sector as well as government don't understand it completely controversial but increasingly complex management system that exist now. Those various technology as debate is individual, they accept responsibility for managing their behavior socially. Here, independent government can be analysis in them of responsible use the skills. There is the scientific moral lemostic space that a practice morality child education guard the loose of dangerous alert them of the commons will mutually imposing gambling as the organization of responsibilities to family and children and the desire to improve their situation since them their family as connected public purpose for the health and peace of society individual need bodies and individual health and well-being The product family goes such a process. Responsibility is responsibilities the stretching encompass in government activities. These stimulates new from the action touch notes state information and organization. Seeing this process in the field in crime control include increased visibility in the private and definitive security sector agency activities. The main message of these activities, the state alone cannot do anymore. Accessible for criminal state, this follow the completely different from the positive deletion. Any more than that, it is the goal bring about social change. Instead, the focus become one the managing social problem rather than them. The concept of risk this context has been become more important. The statistic as the reach or the base of the original conclusion rather than individual diagnosis and one future practice rated rather than one the impossible of the factory bacon in limit like this. This strategy clearly aligns with the producer political project aimed at the revealed a valuable state-based opinion of this threat of property describe the drugs editation. The result of fighting crime is the policy demanded by racial choose the improvement models. Sensitization a risk arising from this behavior. It is considered not to meet basic started with the significant increase in several technology available to monitor population at risk. Then I want to talk about conclusion. Simply put, it is the short-lived because the US is creating more people than any country in the world, including China, and the US is still pioneer in invite population. American approach in the also encourage a basic for public protection. Early effect monetaries and improve severely protect penalties. We should create a new phase game. The first is implementation of pragmatic adaptive approach to the issue of crime, such as the use of private sector management practice in criminal justice system. Through combination of management reform of professional reverse professional evaluation system and the successful replacement of a variety of private voluntary and government activity in the area of crime.
Summary. The eighth chapter that follows this one all explore different aspects of the criminal justice process, the end point which involves the imposition of punishment. In this chapter, we consider the idea of punishment, what it involves and how it be to be understood. In the main chapter focuses on two sets of debates. The first is primarily imposed in order to prevent criminally in the future, or its penalty imposed for inconduct in the past. The second set debates primarily sociological and concern how we are to conceive the place of punishment within society and to understand punishment as a set of social punishments.
Focuses upon the nature and rationale for punishment. Is it primarily imposed in order to prevent criminality in the future, or is it a penalty imposed for misconduct in the past? Or the second set of debates is primarily sociological and concern how we are to conceive of the place of punishment within society and to understand punishment as a set of social practices.